Are you so sure that Strange can summon the teleportation array before being frozen to death? Looking at Strange, whose hands were red from the cold on the screen, wearing only a thin piece of magic apprentice equipment, but still trying to portray the teleportation circle, Constantine couldn't help asking. Ancient One took a sip of tea, then looked at the screen lightly and said, "A person can always inspire his unimaginable potential between life and death." Constantine half understood, but still nodded. "Just wait and see. Strange will surprise all of us unexpectedly." Ancient One still had that calm expression. On the first day, Strange worked very hard to portray, but at most he could only produce a little spark. The next day, Strange felt that he had lost consciousness all over his body, and even his hands stopped shaking because they were too cold. "He is still drawing. Almost. I was almost able to summon the magic circle and leave this ghost place." Strange hadn't eaten for 3 days, his lips were covered with dry, cracked dead skin, and his whole skin showed a strange purple color, but his hands were still moving. After practicing for an unknown amount of time, Strange's eyes suddenly became brighter. He seemed to have figured out something somewhere. And after 3 days of practicing without eating or drinking, Strange suddenly felt as if his arms were driving his fingers. Strange's eyes gradually became firmer, he stopped the meaningless practice, and then he straightened his back. He stood there weakly, then stared at the front tightly, imagining the appearance of the supreme holy place in his mind. Suddenly, Strange's hand began to spin, gradually becoming faster and faster. Sparks appeared out of nowhere, and a circular formation suddenly appeared in front of Strange. Strange didn't have the slightest hesitation, he jumped hard, and then jumped in. The place where he appears happens to be where Ancient One Mage and Constantine are drinking tea. "I did it." Strange was lying on the ground, panting heavily. He suddenly laughed, then looked at Ancient One and said, "I did it." Ancient One nodded with a smile on his face. "From today on, you are my apprentice." Constantine picked up the wine glass in her hand, and raised it slightly towards Strange. "Steppenwolf? Invaders from the other world? The Queen? Hydra base?" Joker sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, and then couldn't help laughing at the information uploaded by the bald agent Hitwell in his hand. "Really, it seems that I really missed a big show, and Captain America." Joker turned his head slightly to look at Bucky's training room. "What a surprise. I didn't expect a person who should have been dead for more than 70 years to live. I don't know what expression you will have when you see that your former childhood friend has become a criminal. Captain America, who represents absolute justice." "That's right, in the United States, you don't have to know who the president is, but you absolutely must not know Captain America. Now in any convenience store in the United States, if you just open the door and walk in, you can see Captain America's figure in the most conspicuous place. Although Captain America has disappeared for 70 years, almost everyone grew up listening to the story of Captain America. Even S.H.I.E.L.D., the world's largest violent organization, is like this. Although it is undeniable that the current S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infiltrated into a plug by Hydra, there are still many loyal agents who regard Captain America Steve Rogers as an idol. Among them, Phil Coulson, who has been killed by Loki, is a good example of this. Tisk tisk tisk, I'm getting more and more excited. In Joker's mind, he can't wait to meet Steve. "Eren, come here." Eren was the first person who was assimilated by Joker after Joker came to the Hydra base, and Joker also used it very smoothly, so he has been serving by Joker's side all the time. It didn't take long before Eren ran in, stopped 2 meters away from Joker, and said excitedly, "Joker, what can I do?" Joker nodded. "Check out what S.H.I.E.L.D. has been up to lately. If you can't find it, ask the bald agent and Pierce. These 2 old dogs sit in the office every day, and they must get much more information than you think." Eren nodded, stood where he was and started to make a phone call. Eren picked up the phone in his hand and dialed a number. After the phone rang 3 times, the person opposite answered it. "Hello. Joker wants to exercise his muscles recently. Has S.H.I.E.L.D. done anything recently?" Eren asked directly. "Move your muscles?" Hitwell froze for a moment, then nodded quickly. "Yes. Definitely yes. Now S.H.I.E.L.D. is negotiating with Thor. Let him give up Tesseract. Now that Loki is still in our hands, we have a great possibility to let Thor take Loki away and leave Tesseract. Dr. La designed a vision plan, which can eliminate all the people in this world who threaten our Hydra, and now that plan has been put in a ship by Dr. Zola. This matter was discussed by Hitwell and Pierce before. They want to use Tesseract to let Dr. Zola, who is still alive in the original Hydra base, come to the 2 aircraft carriers secretly developed by S.H.I.E.L.D., and then start the Insight program. The current Insight plan has been secretly hidden in a ship by Dr. Zola. This is a hard job. Pierce and Sitwell originally discussed that Sitwell would go there after pretending to be kidnapped, but now if Joker wants to go, it just happens to be fulfilled for him. Ship? Project Insight. Dr. Zola? After Eren told Joker the exact words of Hitwell, Joker tilted his head and pondered. It seems that Hydra is still hidden really deep. Also, if it wasn't hidden deep, it would have been dug out by Nick Fury long ago. How can I get such interesting information? Joker raised his head suddenly, his eyes full of madness. Tell Sitwell. I have accepted this task, and I will bring the things back. But I will contact Dr. Zola when I come here. No problem. Hitwell on the opposite side directly agreed to this matter. Within Hydra, Dr. Zola is no secret. Nearly all the middle-level personnel have come into contact with Dr. Zola directly or indirectly. A large part of the people in Hydra in the city are brainwashed by Dr. Zola. If there is no Dr. Zola, then I am afraid that Hydra has already been destroyed in the rolling river of history. How could it be possible to achieve the feat of turning S.H.I.E.L.D., the world's largest violent law enforcement agency, into Snake and S.H.I.E.L.D.? Now Joker has also become a part of their Hydra, so it is not difficult for Joker to meet Dr. Zola. Immediately afterwards, Sitwell continued to speak. In order to prevent accidents with the characters, the Hydra agents headed by Crossbones will mix in the S.H.I.E.L.D. team to provide assistance to you, and also as a surveillance. After all, this incident is related to the Insight plan. It is almost the goal of our entire Hydra Next Century plan, so there is no room for carelessness. Eren looked at the sitting Joker. Joker nodded. So Eren said, no problem. After finishing speaking, Hitwell hurriedly explained the time of the yacht and the places and times he would pass on the way, and then hung up the call. Joker kept all the information in his heart, and then looked at Eren and said, the crew on the yacht, go find someone to kill them all, and then replace them with ours, those who were in the Hydra base in Siberia before. Pick some weak ones and replace them with another batch. Send some agents from the base in Queens to follow me to the yacht. I will disguise myself as a hostage captured by the people on the yacht. This time, the two of them, Abomination and Victor, don't have to follow. I will let Bucky keep me safe in the dark. Eren nodded, took all Joker's words into his heart, and left here. A sinister laugh came out of Joker's mouth. Insight plan. Use all the existing knowledge to make future predictions, and then directly use the heavy firepower Wujing on the space carrier to carry out the bid for millions of killing plans. I am very grateful to Dr. Zola who researched this. I'm really getting more and more curious. Sky. Tricurved wing shield base. The atmosphere in the at the moment conference room was already in a mess. The seats between the Asgard negotiator team led by Thor and the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. executives headed by Nick Fury are clearly defined. In the middle of the crowd was Loki, who had been handcuffed and mouthcuffed. I want to bring Loki back to Asgard. Even if he really killed someone, he should let the laws of Asgard punish him, not the laws of the earth, Thor said angrily. This is impossible. Nick Fury shook his head, and then spoke with great air. Loki has already violated our laws. In just a few days, hundreds of people died directly and indirectly because of him. This is because Bruce's Batfighter was loaded with a small nuclear bomb directly hit the Kirita spaceship. If the Kirita fleet enters the Earth through Loki's teleportation array, New York's economy will lose tens of billions of dollars in direct and indirect assets because of Loki. But the army of the Kiritas did not enter the Earth, and the Steppenwolf was killed by me. Your assumption is not valid. Thor is not someone to be bullied, he snorted coldly, and then spoke to Nick Fury. At this moment, Hitwell spoke. Then, Mr. Thor, since you said that the hypothesis that the Kiritas entered the Earth is not true, then let's talk about what has been established and has become an established fact. Loki came to the Earth for a total of 3 days. During these 3 days, he personally killed 107 people, because he indirectly killed a total of 400 people, and 79 families lost their homes because of Loki. All of these things were caused by Loki's 10 hands. Speaking of the excitement, Sitwell couldn't control himself and stood up abruptly, then pointed at the captured Loki and said, I want to ask, how about these dead people? How should you Asgard God Realm give us an explanation? All eyes were on Thor. Hitvild continued to speak unforgivingly. Or, do you want to use that flimsy paper law of your god's domain to block our mouths? At this moment, Nick Fury also spoke. Mr. Thor Odinson, I remember that Loki had already been to Earth when he was in New Mexico last time. He also summoned 10 Frost Titans and destroyed the destroyer armor you wore earlier. Thor nodded grimly. This thing was indeed done by Loki, there is no need to wash it. Seeing Thor nod, Nick Fury showed a winning smile. I only heard him continue to speak. I'm actually curious, what is the law of your god's domain? Or, our Earth? No, it should be called Midgard in your mouth, right? Midgard is completely a subordinate colony in your eyes. Let alone killing people. Even if Midgard is really destroyed, it is nothing more than a how long will it be closed for a few days. This sentence directly made the faces of all the people present ugly. Most of them looked at Thor and Loki with murderous eyes. Some of them looked at Loki angrily, wishing they could kill him soon. After all, Loki not only brought disaster to Earth, but also killed their Filson agent. If it hadn't been for Nick Fury letting Thor go, I'm afraid Loki would have been eaten by these angry people the moment he was brought back to S.H.I.E.L.D. It's not that we didn't want to punish, but that Loki had already disappeared into the universe with the collapsed Bifrost. Hearing this, Hitwell couldn't help but also laughed. Wandering in the universe. This is really a good reason. Wandering for a few months, and then summon 10 fleets named Chirida who can't wait to invade the Earth. Then come to the Earth to be king? Absurd. This is completely treating them Earthlings as monkeys. If it is really as everyone present thinks, so does it mean that they randomly send a flight member to drop a nuclear bomb on Asgard, and after the nuclear bomb explodes and destroys hundreds of kilometers of land and people in Asgard Fang Yuan, then take that flight member back to Earth and put him in confinement for a few days? Then it's over. After all, people on Earth are not people from Asgard's domain, so naturally they cannot be governed by Asgard's laws. It means it. It's not violating the sovereignty of anywhere on Earth anyway, is it? Even if someone really occupied Asgard, then at most, there would be one more autonomous country on the Earth that could trade. After all, this kind of thing did not happen to the people on Earth. Cold sweat broke out on Thor's face. He knew that if this problem was not resolved, then I'm afraid he might not be able to take Loki away. Even if he can forcibly take Loki back to Asgard with great force. Then I am afraid that from now on, Asgard will also become the enemy of Midgard. Thor cannot bear the blame for this result. At that time, Thor will leave, but those who have had close contact with Thor and who still care about Thor may suffer. Not only Jane and Eric, but even Darcy, who has never spoken to Thor, may be implicated by Thor. Thor's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, Thor lowered his head, and then said with some frustration, "Loki is just young and ignorant, and now he just likes to play." Young and naive. This explanation was totally out of the question for anyone present. Even the people sitting above the positions of Avengers and Justice League looked at Thor, who said that Loki was young and ignorant. How did such words come out of the mouth of a person who has lived for more than 1,000 years? If living for more than 1,000 years is considered young and ignorant, what about them? You must know that the average life expectancy of all human beings is only more than 50 years old, and the average life expectancy of the country with the longest life expectancy in the world is only 70 years. Now Thor actually says that a man who has lived for more than 1,000 years is young and ignorant. This is simply ridiculous. It's not that people with cerebral palsy for more than 1,000 years really can say such words. Thor obviously also knew that his impatience was a bit untenable, and it could even be said that it was a big joke. So he could only cough dryly, then looked at Nick Fury and said, "Then what do you want? How can you release Loki?" See you in the picture. Now that the conversation has come to this point, Nick Fury is not allowed to hide. He said directly, "It's not impossible for you to take Loki and leave the Earth. But you not only have to keep the Tesseract, but Shen also has to give us the Mind Scepter embedded with the Mind Gem brought by Loki." Hearing this, Thor stood up abruptly, then stared at Nick Fury with eyes like brass bells. This is absolutely impossible. The current Earth has no ability, and is not qualified to study infinite gems. If you want to continue to study infinite gems, then the next time you will come as an army that is infinitely stronger than the Chirida fleet. By then, the Earth will only kill itself. For Thor's words, Nick Fury was somewhat disdainful. Compared to the fact that the Chiridas were attracted by the ability emanating from the Tesseract, he is more willing to believe that Loki has already planned for the Earth for a long time. And this time the Tesseract is just a fuse for Loki's intention to start a war. What's more, even if the real Avengers and all the superheroes of the Justice League are defeated, Luke Fury also has his own final killer. In Nick Fury's eyes, that person is comparable to Superman. Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Who knows if what you say is true? With a hole in his heart, Nick Fury stiffened a bit. If you want to take Loki, keep the Tesseract and the Psychic Scepter. If you want to take away the Tesseract and Mind Gem, then you leave Loki on the Earth and let us use the laws of the Earth to publicly judge Loki in front of everyone in the world. Having said that, Nick Fury suddenly broke into a smile. This kind of crime is an unforgivable crime in any country in the world except for people who live a good life. Nick Fury's words are full of demagogy. As long as you leave Loki behind, you can take away the Tesseract and Psychic Scepter. Then you might be able to come and attend Loki's funeral in person. What a bargain. I just exchanged the only 6 infinite gems left in the universe too. This is simply a great gift to Loki. Sitwell wanted to say something more, but after seeing Nick Fury's half-smile expression, he waited and finally didn't speak. He knew that Nick Fury would never hand over the power he was about to acquire to others for no reason. So these words, I am afraid they are specifically for Thor. Sure enough, Hitwell looked at Thor. Thor at the moment has also become anxious because of Nick Fury's words. For Thor, Luke has lived with him for more than 1,000 years. It can be said that even if Loki is really not his real brother, in his heart, Loki has already become like a real brother. If we say that the person Thor can't let go of in this world, apart from Odin and Frigga, then the rest is Loki. This sentence immediately smashed Torna's not too much rationality into pieces. He raised his head to look at Nick Fury, and then said in a slightly hoarse voice, "As long as I hand over the Tesseract and the Psychic Scepter to you, I can bring Loki back to Asgard, right?" Nick Fury nodded and said, "That's right, as long as you can give up the Tesseract and the Scepter, then you can take Loki away. And the Earth will not continue to pursue the crimes committed by Loki on the Earth." Thor sighed, then walked over to Loki's side and pulled him up. "I promise you, Tesseract and Psychic Scepter are yours now, I just hope you don't regret it in the future." After speaking, Mjolnir in Loki's hand began to spin rapidly, and then Thor grabbed Loki's collar, and the speed of the hammer was getting faster and faster. Thor flew into the sky and disappeared into the sky with Loki. Nick Fury finally felt relieved. As the Prince of Asgard, Thor's words can still be believed. This also means that from now on, Tesseract and Psychic Scepter will completely belong to the Shield Regiment. Hill, you go and make arrangements. The Mind Gem is temporarily stored. Don't let anyone get close to him. As for the Tesseract, continue to change the base for research. Let Dr. Banner lead a team to build a laboratory that can completely isolate the energy of gamma rays from spreading outward. Hill nodded. Dr. Banner, who was sitting by the Avengers Alliance, frowned. "This is impossible," he said decisively. "Gamma rays are extremely penetrating. As far as I know, no material in the world can completely block gamma rays, so don't even think about it. Even at a place 10,000 meters underground, the energy of gamma rays will still continuously spread outward." Hearing Banner say this, Nick Fury touched his chin. "Then forget about this matter. But Tesseract still needs to be studied." After speaking, Nick Fury left the meeting room without waiting for everyone to speak, unilaterally announcing the end of the meeting. Sitting on the seat, Sitwell and other people belonging to Hydra could not help but smile knowingly. Nick Fury put S.H.I.E.L.D. in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s storage room. What's the difference between putting it in Hydra's hands? Because Thor is from Asgard and not from Earth, the people sitting above the Avengers and the Justice League did not speak against Nick Fury just now. They also subconsciously regard Tesseract as an asset of the Earth. But now Thor has left with Loki, so naturally they don't have to hide. Bruce was the first to ask. "I'm curious, after you took Tesseract, how do you keep Tesseract safe, or will you be the same as before? Continue to study the infinite resources in Tesseract, and then lead to destruction?" Everyone looked at Nick Fury eagerly, waiting for him to give an answer. Nick Fury lowered his head in thought, then looked at Bruce and said, "We will continue to study Tesseract. After all, no one can give up unlimited resources. You and Tony understand the meaning of this better than me. Just now the Council has issued a global notice that the Avengers and the Justice League have been officially established and have become officially recognized hero organizations. So this means that we have already regarded you as a part of the Earth." Bruce showed a look of joy, but quickly hid it. Bruce said seriously, "I'm asking you a question, Director Nick Fury. If you can't give a definite answer, I don't think everyone here will let you take away the Tesseract and continue to bring disaster to the Earth." Nick Fury glanced at Hill, and then said, "We will put the Psychic Scepter in the storage room of S.H.I.E.L.D., where only the Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. is eligible to enter there." "So Psychic Scepters, don't worry. What about Tesseract?" Tony also frowned and said, "Since just now, Nick Fury has been evading this problem. For Tesseract, we will continue to study on the premise that he is safe." Nick Fury took a deep breath, then spoke. "Are you kidding me?" Tony snorted. "If Thor and Diana weren't there this time, Earth would have already lost the battle. How can you guarantee the premise of safety? How can you guarantee that the next time Earth is attracted by the Tesseract, the enemies will not be stronger than before?" One question after another was pressing down on Nick Fury from Tony's mouth like a mountain. Seeing everyone's eyes, Nick Fury could only sigh. "I can't promise anything, but..." Nick Fury glanced at Bruce and Diana of the Justice League, then turned his head and continued to say to everyone, "Earth is not without the strength to deal with the threats from the universe. Even if the Avengers and the Justice League are really defeated today, I also decided to let the second hand clean up the mess." After finishing speaking, Nick Fury clenched his fists tightly and looked at the crowd and said, "Believe me, no one here loves the Earth as much as I do. I won't joke about the destruction of the Earth." Tony took a deep look at Nick Fury, then sat down. "I hope you will remember what you said. If there are intruders coming because of the Tesseract's energy next time, I will not attack again." "I do not know either." Steve looked at Nick Fury and said, "Tesseract, you shouldn't have salvaged him at the time. I think its destination should be the soul returning to the sea. Bruce and Diana did not speak, but they have already expressed their attitude. Tesseract is already messing with their own business, and if Nick Fury doesn't listen, they won't mind their own business. After all, the Justice League has just been established, and there are still many things to do. And they weren't created just to wipe Nick Fury's ass. Unknown space. Beep, Avengers 1 Battle of New York is over. It is detected that a large number of Aborigines have died and their fate has changed. We hereby reward 100 summoning points. Do you want to activate the summoning? The sound of the system sounded, and Lynn squinted her eyes. With the existence of the system, he can be said to have watched the battle live. Even everyone that Lynn calls out, he can actually influence them. I'll talk about the summoning later. Lynn rubbed her head with some headaches, and then asked, I summoned the Steppenwolf. It stands to reason that his loyal target should be me. Why? Is his allegiance to Darkseid. The people summoned by system did not change his memory, but the system implanted a decree in their minds. The sound of the system fell, and a blue screen appeared in front of Lynn. Turning to the bottom page, Lynn read, everything takes the host as the first indicator? That's right, even if they have already destroyed the world, as long as you are still the host, they still have to obey your orders. As soon as you go out, you can immediately gather everyone outside. That's about the same. Lynn nodded in satisfaction, and then said, summon. Now that the Steppenwolves are out, Superman should be about the same. The system did not answer Lynn. Beep, as calling. Successful summoning, the summoned character is. Beep, the summoning was successful. The character for this summoning is Cyborg. The light curtain dissipated, and one with only half a human face, and the rest were all robots appeared in front of Lynn. Siberian waters. The international pirates at the moment are sitting around drinking excitedly. They didn't know what kind of luck they had today. Just after they went to sea, they encountered a large cruise ship with not very complete weapons. As desperados, when they saw such a big cruise ship, almost everyone's first thought was to take him as their own. The pirates did pay off, too. They directly took guns and slaughtered all the people on it, and then they felt that everything was ready and started to hold a party on their newly snatched cruise ship with wine. Boss, this is so cool. As long as we can sell this cruise ship to those camels in the Middle East, we will never be short of money in our next life. Sell it. The boss looked at the person who spoke just now with a murderous look in his eyes. Yes, it must be sold. Many pirates clamored. It costs a lot of money to raise the 26 cruise ship. After the cruise ship is sold, I will go to the chicken shop on the high seas to find the white girl from the previous time. That is really ecstatic. Tisk tisk. I want to taste what it's like to be an American girl. The obscene language of these uneducated pirates is simply unbearable. It seems that in their view, women are simply goods that can be traded. It is precisely because these people have no culture, so they cannot understand the high-tech radar patrol on this cruise ship. Boss, I just saw a lot of red dots coming towards us in the cab. Just when the pirates were drinking happily, a young boy wearing a silk scarf came over suddenly, and shouted at the old dog. The boss picked up the wine bottle and threw it at the younger brother. The wine bottle was smashed open under Xiao Xiao's feet, and the wine splashed everywhere. The little boy was immediately too frightened to speak. All the boss's subordinates know that this boss is extremely cruel. It is said that he killed dozens of people in his own country in the early years for fear of being caught, and then came to the high seas to become a pirate. The boss spat, then glanced coldly at the little boy and said, if there is a red dot, there is a red dot. What is your name here? It disturbs my brother's and I's interest in drinking. If there is a red dot, go to it by yourself. Solve it. Maybe it's just that the cruise ship is malfunctioning. After finishing speaking, God continued to turn his head and drank a beer, so. Boss is good at drinking. Based on the boss's drinking capacity, after a few days, we will directly knock down the United States and let ZT give way to our boss. A trace of resentment flashed in Xiao Xiao's eyes when he looked at the group of people who were drinking and having fun. Why? Why can those people just sit there, eat, drink and have fun? And those of us who took down this cruise ship don't give us anything. Thinking of this, Xiao's eyes became more and more resentful, and finally his whole eyes turned red. The drunk and aggressive boss glanced at the young man with drunken eyes, and then said angrily, you bastard, why don't you leave? Do you want to come and share with us? Xiaoluo didn't speak, and lowered his head. Suddenly, he raised his head abruptly, and looked at the boss with unprecedented resentment. You dare to stare at me? I will send you to see Jesus right now. Hiccup. The boss hiccuped, and then reached for the gun at his waist with a hand that was a little unsteady even for the bottle. But before he touched it, a bullet suddenly shot from between his eyebrows. Xiao Xiaoluo trembled, and then involuntarily fired the bullet from his gun. No, I didn't kill it. I didn't intend to kill anyone. Xiao originally wanted to justify a few words, but when he saw the eyes of those drunk and menacing people who wanted to eat people, he suddenly became crazy. Xiao Xiaoluo closed his eyes directly, and then launched towards the group of people with his eyes closed. All he could hear was a series of gunshots around him. When he opened his eyes again, everyone in front of Xiao Xiaoluo had already fallen into a pool of blood. Xiao Xiaoluo turned his head, and a group of well-dressed agents looked at him expressionlessly. The leader is a joker wearing a joker mask. Although Xiao could not see his expression, Xiao could clearly feel the malice in him. Who are you? The little boy asked tremblingly. But he was destined not to get an answer. If it was normal, Joker would still play games with this somewhat interesting person for a while, but obviously not now. Joker just received a message from Iran, and the distress signal has been sent. Now Nick Fury has received a distress call, according to Hydra. The agents headed by Captain America and Black Widow are gathering quickly, and they will arrive here in at most half an hour. So Joker narrowed his eyes slightly, raised the gun in his hand and shot a bullet at the little guy's head without any hesitation. The bullet pierced Xiao's eyebrows, and then Xiao fell to the ground 157 minutes later. There was a cruel, fleeting expression of enjoyment in Joker's eyes, and then he turned his head and said, according to the original plan. A team from Siberia is going to kill all the pirates on this ship and take control of the cruise ship. And clean up all their corpses. Don't let the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. find out the slightest clue. Team 2 Queens Hydra pretending to be hostages, continue to send signals towards the outside, and keep in communication. After Joker finished speaking, everyone started to act, and the agents of Hydra began to handcuff themselves. Bucky, you and I came to the control room. I really want to see how powerful this insight plan is. After speaking, Joker went directly to the direction of the control room. Bucky was wearing a mask, holding a semi-automatic mechanized rifle in his hand, and followed Joker closely without saying a word. Not long after, the sound of howling ghosts and wolves sounded from various places on the cruise ship from time to time. In just 10 minutes, more than 100 pirates on the entire cruise ship were all killed by the people from the Siberia base. All the Siberians wore identical Joker masks on their faces, and suddenly, the atmosphere of the whole ship became terrifying. Indian Ocean. On a large armed helicopter. The target is a mobile satellite launch platform, Lemuria Star. When the pirates boarded the ship 93 minutes ago, they were launching the last satellite. Our S.H.I.E.L.D. people happened to be nearby at the time, and went to rescue after receiving the signal, and were all captured. Talking Crossbones, he is introducing the current situation to Captain America and Black Widow. Steve frowned and said, what does the other party want? 1.5 billion. Crossbones babbled. Why do they dare to ask for so much? Natasha Romanoff also asked with some doubts. We must know that 1.5 billion is not a small number. This money is enough for them to build 2 more ships. Because it's S.H.I.E.L.D. ship. Crossbones looked at Natasha Romanoff and spoke. So the distress signal we found is real. They must have a reason. At this moment, Steve's tone became a little impatient. I hate having to wipe Nick Fury's ass all the time. Natasha Romanoff reassured. Relax, it's not that complicated. It's just some pirates, we'll end the fight soon. I hope so. Steve shrugged, then looked at Crossbones. How many pirates? Crossbones looked at the thermal image on the satellite and said, 25. The leader is an Indian. 20 years ago, he killed more than 50 people from the same village and went to sea, and then formed a pirate group. The most wanted criminal on the International Reward Order, Red Notice. Where's the hostage? Steve asked. Most of them are technicians, they are attached to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base in Queens, and they came to the Indian Ocean to perform the mission. What mission do you perform? Steve asked suspiciously. He always felt something was wrong with this matter. Forget it, it has nothing to do with me. Steve shook his head, since he couldn't figure it out, then he didn't want to. He turned his head and said, Natasha Romanoff, you go to turn off the engine and wait for the order. Rumlow, you go to the rear kitchen to find the hostages, take them into the lifeboat, and rescue them. Natasha Romanoff and Crossbones both nodded. Steve's eyes flickered, and he said, start to act. A few minutes later, a voice said in the public channel, Captain, we are about to enter the skydiving area. Skydiving? Who needs that? Steve smiled, then went straight to the rear hatch and jumped without hesitation. This scene happened to be seen by several people from Hydra, and one of Hydra asked Crossbones with some doubts, is he wearing a parachute? Crossbones shook his head solemnly, no, I didn't wear it. Natasha Romanoff looked at Steve, who jumped directly and shook his head. He really is a boy who likes to express himself. Now the altitude of the plane is about 300 meters. In other words, Steve jumped directly from the helicopter at an altitude of about 300 meters without carrying any safety measures. This is much more dangerous than any extreme sport in the world. Steve jumped out of the hatch, holding the shield tightly in his hands. The biting cold wind blowing across his cheeks constantly, the adrenaline was soaring. Steve opened his hands violently. Only at this time can he find some of the passion he had fighting Hydra back then. Steve flew straight towards the ship, and when he was about to reach the ship, he hurriedly protected the shield inside in front of his body, and then made a loud boom. Who? The loud noise immediately attracted the attention of Joker's people. If it was the pirates before, I am afraid they would not have noticed at all, but now the people here are no longer the group of pirates who only know how to eat, drink, marry and kill the weak. And after the special training of Joker's men, they are soldiers with real fighting qualities. So the sound of landing was discovered immediately. Fact. Didn't they say that their ears are not very good? What's going on? Seeing several pirates appearing not far away, Steve quickly raised the vibranium shield in his hand. Rounds of bullets from semi-automatic rifles constantly hit Steve's shield, making a crisp clang-dang sound. But it doesn't seem to work. Steve retreated as he walked. His goal had been achieved. After all, his purpose this time was to let himself attract the vitality of these pirates, and then let Natasha Romanoff and Rumlow lead the team to rescue the hostages. When retreating into a corner, Steve threw the shield in his hand without any hesitation. The vibranium shield returned to Steve's hands after knocking down several people in a row. Damn it, the man over here is Captain America. A soldier gave a loud roar, and then said, "Throw a grenade." Hearing what the soldier said, he cursed naturally. Throw a grenade if you can't hit it, right? Why don't these pirates follow the rules of the game at all? At the same time, the feeling that something was wrong in Steve's heart became more and more intense. According to the information currently known by S.H.I.E.L.D., there are 25 pirates in this group, and all of them are ruffians who haven't read much. I don't even know what tactical warfare is, but the pirate just now made the most correct decision almost instantly. When he found that the bullets could not penetrate the shield, he ordered his subordinates to bomb with grenades. This is not like the words of a person who has never read military books. But more at the moment Steve had no time to think about it, he quickly raised the shield and hid towards the back. Boom boom boom. A series of flames exploded in front of Steve, unleashing shockwaves of immense power. Steve held the shield in front of him, but was overturned several times before he stopped. Just when Steve was about to stand up, a semi-automatic rifle was directly placed on Steve's head. "Captain, if I were you, I wouldn't act rashly now." The soldier who just spoke walked up to Steve, then looked down at Steve and said. Steve shook his head with a smile, and then said, "Your combat tactics don't look like you haven't been trained at all. What's the purpose of you pretending to be pirates?" Steve wanted to get a little information out of their mouths. But apparently these people didn't give Steve a chance. They all shut their mouths tightly and confessed. Steve shrugged, and then said, "Looks like there's no way to ask who you are." Steve raised his head suddenly, his eyes fixed on the soldier who just spoke. The soldier screamed in his heart that it was not good, and then wanted to shoot. But Steve obviously wouldn't give him the chance either. I saw Steve stood up suddenly, and then took the vibranium shield to block the bullets fired towards him. The rebound of the bullet caused several people who were a little close to be directly killed by the bullet he fired. Soon, Steve knocked all these soldiers to the ground by virtue of his extraordinary physical fitness. A group of people with guns in their hands were all knocked down to the ground by a man without a gun in their hands. If you say it, no one will believe it. But the man without the gun is Captain America, and suddenly everything makes sense. He held up the shield coolly, then smiled at the people on the ground. "Too bad you're not Captain America." After speaking, he continued to walk in the opposite direction from the kitchen. The soldiers on the ground saw Steve leaving, and quickly said, "Now Captain America has boarded the ship and is heading towards the command room. He may steal the secrets on the ship." On the other side, Natasha Romanoff, Crossbones and the remaining agents finally landed with parachutes from a height of 300 meters. Once down, Natasha Romanoff came under fire. "Attention SHIELD personnel. Attention SHIELD personnel. Our intelligence is wrong. There are definitely more than 25 pirates on board now. Everything is based on rescuing the hostages." Because there were too many people attacking, and most of the agents were taken away by Crossbones to rescue the hostages in the kitchen. So now Natasha can only hide in a hidden place with the remaining S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, waiting for the bullets on the opposite side to run out. Fact. How could S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligence go wrong? Beside Natasha Romanoff, a level 6 agent spoke angrily. Not only him, even the remaining few agents were all very angry. If there is anything Shindongju is most proud of, it must be intelligence. But now suddenly someone came to tell them that something they were most proud of was wrong. No, it shouldn't be that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligence is wrong. Natasha Romanoff was still calm. She opened her mouth to analyze. The last time we received a distress signal was 90 minutes ago, which means that there were 25 pirates in total at that time. There was a glint in Natasha Romanoff's eyes, and she told the truth lightly. It means that something must have happened in these 90 minutes that we don't know. Maybe the 25 pirates are all dead now, replaced by a mysterious army. This sentence was said by Natasha Romanoff, who opened the public channel, so everyone who performed the mission this time heard it. The Hydra who were heading towards the kitchen looked at each other. The leading Crossbones cursed. Fact. I didn't expect to be discovered so soon. Let's hurry up and join Joker. After cursing, Crossbones opened the public channel. Captain, Natasha Romanoff, we are very quiet here, not a single enemy has been spotted. No way, the current Hydra cannot be directly exposed to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s field of vision. After all, if they want to complete the Insight plan, they must rely on the re-extinction calendars on the 2 space carriers that are currently being studied. What? When Crossbones said this, both Steve and Natasha Romanoff were stunned. Direction. A soldier with no handle. How is this possible? Unless. The bad feeling in Steve's heart became stronger. He hurriedly said, Rumro, stop now, get out of the kitchen. But Steve's words were obviously a bit late. Only the sound of gunshots came from the headset. Then these people completely lost their voices. Rumlo. Rumro. Steve yelled into the headset a few times, but found that it was gone. After responding, he said angrily, Maja fake. The other side. Many agents of Hydra also put down the speakers in their hands. The sound just now came from their speakers. Crossbones smiled knowingly, then took off the headset and put on another headset. Hello. After Crossbones finished speaking, a voice sounded from the opposite side. Are you sure there are no S.H.I.E.L.D. people around? Crossbones looked around, then said, Sure. Okay, come to the kitchen now. Remember not to reveal your identity. Yes. One of the Hydra agents headed towards the kitchen. When they got to the kitchen, Crossbones walked in the front, knocked on the door and pushed open the door. The kitchen was quiet, and at first glance it seemed that there was no one there. But suddenly a bright light flashed, and all Hydra agents couldn't help closing their eyes. After the Joker's people saw that the person coming was Crossbones, the agents showed their heads from behind, and then they all skillfully uncuffed their hands. Joker took off the mask on his head, squinted his eyes and walked to the front, then extended his hand towards Crossbones. Just call me Joker. Crossbones nodded and took Joker's outstretched hand. Sir. Just call my codename Crossbones. The corner of Joker's mouth curled up in a strange arc, and then he said, Then I'll just call you Crossbones. How is the situation now? Crossbones thought for a while. Now Captain America and Natasha Romanoff are at the front of the cruise ship, it will take a little time to come over. When we leave now, we can't be exposed to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s vision. Once exposed, the Insight plan will not be able to be implemented. We need you to cooperate with us and forge our Shu-Na certificate. Joker nodded, and then said, Steve Rogers will definitely come to the back to check your situation in a while. At that time, I will send some people to throw you off the boat. After throwing down, you just take advantage of the night to climb from the back, come up and hide in the engine compartment. Crossbones nodded. All at your command. After this mission is over, Hitterwell ordered me to take you to see Dr. Zola. While the two were talking, Rideo's voice suddenly came out from the headset. Now Captain America is rushing towards the kitchen at an extremely fast speed. All the soldiers who set up ambushes along the way were knocked down. Joker's right angle evoked a slight arc, and then smiled. It seems that our audience is almost here, get ready. Many agents are all holding guns, and then they can be equipped with a few clicks. In order to strive for authenticity, Crossbones also specially opened a blood hole in his arm with a pistol in a place that would not affect the battle. Hurry up. Gritting his teeth, Crossbones said to Oda with cold sweat on his head. Definitely. Go throw him down. A strange thought flashed in Joker's eyes, he didn't expect Crossbones to be so cruel to him. If all Hydra are such werewolves, then where are the Avengers? Mommy fuck. You stop me quickly. When Steve first arrived, he happened to see an agent grabbing Crossbones and throwing it out of the window. Crossbones' blood dripped right on the edge of the window before disappearing into the ocean. This scene directly angered Steve. He raised the shield in his hand angrily, and then smashed the head of the person who had just thrown the Crossbones down. You put down their bodies for me, Steve said angrily. But the people present are all from Joker, so how could anyone listen to Steve? I saw that they were still transporting corpses in an orderly manner. The person at the farthest side of the window is wearing a black mask, which covers the whole face tightly, only revealing a pair of eyes. Seeing the shield flying towards him, he grinned openly, and stretched out his red star mechanical arm, firmly grasping Steve's angry blow. The man standing by the window is exactly what Joker brought back from the Hydra base in Siberia, Winter Warrior Bucky. This. How is this possible? Steve froze for a moment, then spoke in disbelief. Brazil ignored him, but directly raised his shoulder, the rifle slung on it, and fired at Steve. Because there was no shield, Steve could only start to dodge awkwardly. After finally finding a hiding place, he just showed his head and wanted to go there, but the exposed place was quickly sieved. Damn, if I knew I wouldn't have just thrown the shield. What kind of freak is that guy? Steve turned on the headset, and quickly said, almost all of them are concentrated in the back kitchen. The agents sent to rescue before have all been thrown into the sea, and their lives are unknown. The weirdo who lives in my shield. I don't have a weapon with me right now, please help. As soon as these words came out, Natasha Romanoff and the remaining SHIELD agents were all stunned. Obviously none of them thought that this confident rescue would turn out like this. And there is even a monster that can catch the Captain America shield. This task is no longer difficult for them to handle. Natasha Romanoff made a decisive decision and immediately opened the mouth and said, "Go to the back kitchen to support the captain first. This time the situation is serious. I will go to the headquarters to ask for support." Several agents nodded, and then rushed directly towards the kitchen. Natasha Romanoff raised the gun in his hand, attracting the firepower of those soldiers and creating a living space for several agents. After several agents left, Natasha Romanoff retracted her head again. Then Natasha Romanoff quickly took out the director's dedicated satellite phone and started calling. This phone can be used when there is a signal jammer, and almost everyone in the upper echelon of SHIELD has one. Natasha Romanoff dialed and swiped twice, then dialed the phone. Director Nick Fury, SHIELD's intelligence is wrong. A group of unknown people boarded the cruise ship after the last satellite launch and before we boarded the ship. And there is a weirdo who can catch Captain America's shield. Request support. What did you say? At the moment Nick Fury, who was sitting in the office, suddenly jumped up from his seat, and then said with an expression of disbelief. But soon he reacted. Now you are in the Indian Ocean, and it takes at least 50 minutes to transfer people from the nearby SHIELD bases. Can you hold on? I'm afraid not. Natasha frowned and said. Now the situation on Captain America's side, I have already asked 2 agents to support him. But according to Steve, his shield should not be by his side now. And there is another one that can catch him. I'm afraid it will be difficult to survive the monsters on the shield, and until now we don't know how many people are on the cruise ship. Mare Falk. You try to hold on, and help will arrive in 40 minutes. After finishing speaking, Nick Fury put down the phone in his hand, picked up another phone, and started calling. Agents, start working. Suddenly, the already occupied SHIELD dormitory immediately began to light up. In just 5 minutes, a large team of agents has all assembled. Now I have received an urgent mission. Captain America is trapped on a cruise ship in the Indian Ocean. The number of enemies is unknown, and the weapons are unknown, but there is a weirdo who can catch the shield thrown by Captain America. I want you for half an hour arrive at the cruise ship and rescue Captain America. Speaking of which, Nick Fury looked at the agents who were ready to go and let out a long breath. I'll also give you guys as much support as an Avengers guy to deal with the agent that can catch the shield. Yes. All the agents shouted, and then boarded the plane quickly and methodically. After seeing the plane take off, Nick Fury quickly called Tony. Tony at the moment is drinking with a young model in this issue of New York Times Magazine. After seeing K. Fury's phone call, he can't deduce it without hesitation. Mommy F***K. Nick Fury cursed, and then continued to dial. After being hung up 5 times, Tony answered the phone slowly. Nick Fury, call me this late, you have to give me an explanation. The enthusiasm that Tony had accumulated with great difficulty was directly returned to the original point by Nick Fury's phone calls one after another. He answered the phone angrily, and then spoke angrily. There's someone who can hold Steve's shield, and now Steve and Natasha Romanoff and a group of SHIELD agents are stranded in the Indian Ocean. Tony interrupted Nick Fury rudely. If that's the case, I suggest you send Hulk. Maybe he'll just smash those monsters into meatloaf. Nick Fury gave a wry smile, and then said, now Dr. Banner has returned to Carroll University, and if you want to be notified, it will take at least 2 hours to go back and forth. Now only you can save them. Tony spat and went straight to his clothes. Tony, don't you want to come and do something fun with me? Tony gave her a cold look, and then said, now I have a mission, if I have time, I will come back and do it with you. After speaking, Tony put on the Mark 9 directly, and then flew out from the roof of the villa. Only the unbelievable Hollywood star was left behind. Who exactly are you? Steve. who was in custody, was brought in front of Joker, and then looked at Joker wearing a Joker mask and asked, "You don't even know who I am." Joker seemed to have heard a big joke. He took off the Joker mask on his face, stared at Steve with a stern look and said, "Do you know who I am now? The famous Captain America?" "Joker," Steve said through gritted teeth. Ever since he was dug out of the glacier, the name he has heard the most is Joker. It is said that it hasn't been long since Joker appeared in New York, but he has done more crimes than some other criminals in their lifetime. Even when Natasha Romanoff and Barton of S.H.I.E.L.D. went to arrest Joker, he still escaped. Nick Fury's evaluation after the ugly message of the little is this: a lunatic who is beyond the ordinary, irrational, unpredictable behavior, but with extreme intelligence. Even Nick Fury, the king of agents, said so Steve has studied Joker carefully for a while, and even communicated with Natasha Romanoff and Barton who fought with Joker. But no useful information was obtained. Finally, Natasha Romanoff gave Steve a proposal. If Steve really wants to know Joker, he can go to the newly established Wayne Group in the suburbs of New York to find out. If anyone in the world knows Joker best, it must be the chairman of Wayne Group, Batman Bruce Wayne. But Steve had just met Bruce in the battle with the Kiritas, was dispatched here before he could visit, and then met the Joker. Steve couldn't help squinting his eyes in alarm. "Joker, this ship belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D. You hijacked him for what the hell?" Joker shrugged, then lifted his head slightly. "Originally, I was planning to go to Siberia, but who would have thought that I would see a group of pirates hijacking a cruise ship? Why?" There was a smile on Joker's face. "You know, I despise this kind of pirate the most, so I had to be merciful and replace it. After boarding the ship, I found out that this is actually a ship of S.H.I.E.L.D. No way. Not to mention, S.H.I.E.L.D. and I are really destined." All Joker's words were recorded by Steve with a tape recorder. I saw Steve looked at the monster who caught his shield again and asked, "Who is that monster?" "Monster?" Hearing Steve say that Bucky turned out to be a monster, Joker was already laughing so hard that his stomach couldn't stand upright. He gripped Steve's head tightly, then turned his head toward Bucky and asked with a puzzled look, "You said he was a monster? Right?" Steve nodded without hesitation. "Then what are you?" Joker asked again. He let go of Steve's head and counted on his fingers. "Is it a soldier from World War E? Captain America? Or a genetically modified monster?" Joker suddenly raised his head, and two pairs of eyes with heavy black makeup stared straight at Steve. "Or, are you Steve? What about Rogers? Besides, you actually said that about your former friend. I think he would be very sad if he found out." "Oh, no, he has already heard it." Joker turned his head to look at Bucky, and then ordered, "Bucky, come here." "Bucky? No, definitely not. Bucky has been dead for over 70 years. Joker must be bluffing, trying to take the opportunity to beat himself. After Steve heard the name of his former friend, he was in a state of confusion, completely unable to think calmly. Bucky stood in front of Steve, and looked down at him. Steve couldn't help but close his eyes. Joker said with a half smile, "Aren't you curious about who this monster is? Why did you close your eyes suddenly?" Steve didn't open his eyes, he just took a few deep breaths, calmed down, and said, "My best friend is Bucky Barnes, it's no secret, almost everyone in America knows you don't want to lie to me about this." "Really? Then you might as well open your eyes and see if this monster is Bucky Barnes?" While speaking, Joker slowly took off Bucky's mask in front of him. A face that made Steve dream about appeared in front of him. Steve opened his eyes. The next moment, his eyes were wide open, his fingers were trembling slightly, his whole lips were slightly parted, and he wanted to say something, but when the words came to his mouth, he was choked up and couldn't say anything. Bucky? Is that you?" Bucky didn't answer Steve's words. Joker walked slowly in front of Steve, then bowed his head and said, "Definitely not. Didn't you say that? Your friend named Bucky died 70 years ago now. What is in front of you is just a household from 70 years ago. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible." Steve struggled violently all of a sudden, not even caring about the sharp pain on his thumb behind him. "Joker. You let him go. What are you doing to me?" Steve looked like a madman, his whole eyes were like copper bells, glaring at Oda. Bucky looked at Steve, a little slack in his expression, but it disappeared quickly. He stepped forward quickly, and punched Steve hard in the face. Steve calmed down suddenly. Bucky looked down at Steve, with no emotion in his eyes. "Aren't you dead?" Steve asked tremblingly. In Steve's memory, Bucky was shot off a cliff during a battle against Hydra, and then became boneless with stone. Now, 70 years later, why is Bucky standing here intact? No, it's not perfect either. Steve's eyes went to Bucky's Red Star robotic arm. One of Bucky's arms has been completely replaced with metal. Joker stood up at this time. and took the initiative to explain to Steve. It's actually very simple, Bucky didn't die at that time. Joker shrugged his shoulders, and then said, it's just that you people are too lazy, and you think that he will die if he dies, so you didn't go down to find him. When our people found him, he broke an arm, in howling heartfeltly in the unobstructed snow. Tisk tisk tisk, then he was completely disappointed with your country, and then fell into our arms. Joker opened his arms and laughed wildly. That's absolutely impossible. I know what Bucky is, there's no way he's going to betray us. Steve couldn't believe a single punctuation mark of what Joker said. And what kind of person Bucky is, others don't know, how can he not know? Bucky, like him, is a person who can fight to the death for the country, so how could he betray? The Joker must have used some means to control Bucky, or brainwash Bucky's mind. Steve thought about something calmly, and then asked, what do you mean by us? What is the force that saved Bucky? Didn't you already guess it? Joker turned to look at Steve. I know what you're thinking in your heart. You all have nothing to hide in my eyes. Joker licked his scarlet lips, then leaned into Steve's ear and said, Hydra hail? Impossible. The leader of Hydra, Red Skull, has already been killed by me. The headed snake should have perished long ago. Joker shook his head, then laughed. You were the main force against Hydra 70 years ago, so you should have a certain understanding of Hydra's slogan. One head is cut off, and two heads grow back. How could such a tenacious creature disappear in a mere war? Among them. Joker touched his chin, and then said, just like Bucky in front of you, he is the product of Hydra's experiment. Hydra isn't extinct yet, Steve murmured. He couldn't accept this kind of reality. In order to destroy the organization Hydra, they paid a very painful price. 70 years have passed, and now a person pops up and tells him that Hydra has not disappeared, but has continued to exist in this world for a full 70 years. This is too outrageous. Seeing Steve's yin and yang changes, Oda smiled in satisfaction. This is what he wants to achieve. Why would he bring Bucky here to meet Steve this time? On the one hand, because Joker originally liked to play, he wanted to see Steve's reaction when he saw his former best friend and he became an enemy. On the other hand, Joker wants to use this incident to focus S.H.I.E.L.D., Avengers, and the Justice League all on Hydra. This trick is called Dark Chen Kang. Anyway, now the Joker has got the Crossbones guy. As a 7th level agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Crossbones can also be regarded as the core personnel of Hydra. So Crossbones knows not a little about Hydra's secrets. The Hydra base in Siberia alone allowed Joker to get Sabretooth as a general, and all his bones were replaced with advanced military alloys. If you find a few more, then maybe Joker's combat power will rise in a straight line. And Joker's next target is Dr. Zola, who invented the Insight Plan. Thinking of this, Joker squinted his eyes and smiled, and then said to Steve, Hydra definitely won't be wiped out that easily. And I have a message for you. What news? Steve asked impatiently. His lips grinned, and he said, during the 70 years you have been sleeping, Hydra has actually been alive. Not only that, they have infiltrated every corner of this world. As long as you can think of places, they all exist. These words directly stunned Steve and the two S.H.I.E.L.D. agents lying on the roof. Hydra and the others know very well that they took this course when they were studying history in the military academy. It's just that I didn't expect that Hydra, which was considered by everyone to have disappeared during World War E, is still alive and well. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. has not received any news for decades. This is simply a fantasy. If Hydra is really still there, how can we S.H.I.E.L.D. not receive any news? Who knows? The two agents were talking on it, when a shuttle of bullets suddenly swept past the two of them. Several Hydra soldiers climbed up quickly, and captured the two of them alive. I didn't expect there to be two little mice left behind eavesdropping on the roof. Joker handcuffed the two of them himself, then put the two of them together with Steve and said, Joker, I advise you to let us go quickly. S.H.I.E.L.D. support is coming soon. An agent threatened with a stern voice. I definitely know that S.H.I.E.L.D. support is coming soon. Joker opened his mouth and smiled, then glanced at the clock on the wall and said, let me guess, it takes at least 40 minutes to get here from the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, and it has been 20 minutes since we captured Captain America. There should be about 20 minutes for your support to arrive. But more than 20 minutes is enough for me to kill you and then leave here. Joker spoke confidently, but a voice suddenly appeared the next moment. A red and gold armor suddenly smashed through the roof from above and landed in front of Joker. S.H.I.E.L.D. does need 40 minutes, but 10 minutes is enough for me. Tony landed in front of Joker wearing Mark 9, and then looked at Joker in front. It's probably the second time we've met. Let me introduce myself. I'm Tony Stark, the president of the Stark Group. You can also call me Iron Man. Tony Stark? I didn't expect you to be the first to arrive. Joker shrugged, then said indifferently, since you know me, then you should quickly surrender. Tuo Zhang said coldly. I believe that Guy Zhang K. Fury will give you a special deluxe version of the prison for my sake. Your proposal is very touching, but unfortunately, I don't like going to jail. Joker's flirtatious voice suddenly turned cold, and he looked at Bucky and said, Bucky, kill him. Bucky, who was behind Tony, jumped up immediately after hearing Joker's order, and punched Tony. Tony smiled, and reached out to catch Bucky's fist. Immediately afterwards, Tony stuck out a foot and tripped Bucky, and then kicked him in front of Joker. I think you should modify him, a mechanical arm is still too affecting to play. Stark said indifferently. Bucky stood up again and rushed towards Tony. But he was kicked back to Joker's feet by Tony every time. Joker's face also became a little ugly. People like you can only bully the old, weak, sick and disabled like Rogers. Tony suddenly accelerated and came to Joker's side, then looked at Bucky under his feet with two cold eyes and said disdainfully. Immediately afterwards, Tony raised his energy cannon and pointed it at Bucky's head. Tony, he's my friend. Seeing the killing intent on Tony's face, Steve spoke quickly. Friends? You really have a wide variety of friends. Tony sneered, but shifted the energy cannon that was aimed at Bucky's head to aim at his arm. Boom. Only a boom was heard, and a blue laser shot out from Tony's arm, and then exploded on Bucky's metal mechanical arm in an instant. You don't need to thank me. I'm just here so that you don't continue to harm other people. Tony laughed. If it were me, I would directly use a material mixed with vibranium and adamantium to make this arm. At least it's not so fragile, isn't it? Tony didn't care about Joker's face at all, and flaunted his power in front of Oda. At the same time, he couldn't help but underestimate Bruce and Nick Fury. Because Joker is just a common person. Like now, if Tony wanted to, now he could just kill Joker and take Oda's life. As for what Bruce said earlier that the Joker might have a regenerative healing factor. Joker is obviously just a common person, how could he have regenerative healing factor? Thinking of this, Tony pointed the energy cannon in his hand at Joker without hesitation, and fired it out without hesitation. Joker staggered and dodged in a hurry. Ha ha ha. Why are you in such a hurry? Joker said to Tony with a smile after standing still. Doing it like this now is breaking the rules of the game. Game rule, Tony snorted coldly. My rule here is the game rule. Yeah? Joker suddenly broke into a smile. The next moment, a bomb suddenly appeared under Tony's feet, and then exploded directly. Tony was about to defend, but suddenly the voice of Jarvis came out. Currently the integrity of the armor is 100%. Not a bomb? Tony reacted in an instant, and then continued to shoot with the gun without mercy. Joker can always dodge Tony's attacks just right. Suddenly, Tony sensed a dangerous atmosphere, and he hurriedly took a few steps towards the back. The bright light of Wudao and White suddenly appeared where Tony was standing just now. The next moment, Victor appeared in Tony's field of vision. Joker hid behind Victor, and then said arrogantly, "Let him come and play with you. Sabretooth, come on." Sabretooth nodded, and then prostrated himself on the ground in a feline way, and the 10 shiny wolf claws on his hands also showed their sharpness. Mutants? Don't you think about those mutants at Westchester? No matter at any time, mutants with special functions are not as powerful as humans with thermal weapons. Sabretooth didn't speak, but his claws continued to move towards Tony. Tony couldn't dodge in time. The wolf claws collided with Tony's armor, sending out a series of sparks. Warframe integrity. 97%. What? Tony was startled. One claw made the integrity of his armor drop by 3%. Could his claws be made of vibranium? Tony couldn't help but become wary. Suddenly, a child appeared in front of Tony. Not good. Tony grumbled inwardly. This kid is the mutant kid from last time at the Flushing Center, and he can control electromagnetism. Tony flew outside in a hurry. Because if there is no electricity, then the Mark 9 on his body will completely become a piece of scrap metal. But it was already too late, and the electro-optical man waved his hands lightly. All the electric current around them gathered towards the electric man's hands at an extremely fast speed. Warning. The electric current output of Mark 9 is abnormal. The power remaining is 70%, 60%, 10%, 0%. When the battery level became 0%, Tony fell directly from the top and landed in front of Joker. You were really confident. Why didn't you think of this level? Joker looked at Tony in front of him with a smile and asked. Tony felt a little remorse. He had known for a long time that there was an electron beside Joker, but the electron at that time was not as powerful as he is now. It is unheard of to absorb 3 billion joules of energy from the new element in a short period of time. After absorbing Tony's energy, Electro-Optic Man became extremely bright, and his body suddenly swelled a few points, not looking like a 13 or 14-year-old boy at all. Damn it. Tony wanted to stand up, but without the power supply, the battle gear made of titanium alloy seemed so cumbersome. Tony couldn't even stand up. Joker stepped on Tony's back, and then put his back on Tony's back, which he had just bent over a little. Is there anyone who can save you now? Joker asked. Tony was not flustered at all. He smiled and said, definitely, and you should know this person. As soon as Tony finished speaking, a Batfighter suddenly appeared in Shangchun. The sound of the loudspeaker resounded around the cruise ship. Joker, you released the hostage. Bruce? You even informed him? Joker looked at Tony in surprise. Tony lay on the ground, and a small smile played on his lips. I'm just a little arrogant, not stupid. I've already suffered a loss under your hands once before, even if Nick Fury is not named Bruce because of his position. How could I not be tired? When Tony flew here and found Joker, he immediately called Bruce and asked him to come here. At the same time, Tony lay on the ground and couldn't help mocking S.H.I.E.L.D.'s equipment secretly. It takes 40 minutes to fly over such a small distance. The Batfighter stopped in the sky, and Bruce slid down from the Batfighter with a rope, and then came to the kitchen. Bruce, old friend, long time no see. I'm not your friend, Joker. Tell me, what is your purpose of hijacking this cruise ship? Bruce said coldly. Bruce couldn't believe that Joker wanted to hijack a cruise ship on a whim. He must have ulterior motives for hijacking this cruise ship. Purpose? What purpose can I have? Joker chuckled twice, and then said, I'm just a poor Joker with no friends. Isn't it okay to want to do a good thing once in a while? You will do good? Bruce glanced at Joker coldly. I would rather believe that a sow can climb a tree than believe that you will do good. Joker spread his hands indifferently. If you don't believe it, forget it. Anyway, he didn't lie. After all, doing good to Hydra is a good thing, isn't it? Let them go. Bruce walked straight ahead. Sabretooth started attacking Bruce from the side, and he directly came to Bruce's side with extremely fast speed, and then stretched out his sharp claws. Only a burst of sparks flashed. Except for a shallow scratch on Bruce's battle armor, there is no damage. Electron's fingers exerted a little force, and all the dense steel around him flew towards Bruce in one go. Bruce raised his foot, and kicked it straight up. Use bullets. Use bullets. This guy is a monster. A soldier suddenly said in fear. Joker turned his head and glanced at him fiercely, and then mercilessly opened a blood hole directly above the center of his brow. Who gave you the right to give you orders? Joker spit on the lifeless, dead body. No one answered Joker, so he just kept looking at Bruce. Bruce took 2 more steps forward, and Joker backed away, onto the ground with a cover. Suddenly, Joker pressed the switch in his hand. Boom. Under Bruce's feet, where Joker had just stood, suddenly there was a violent explosion. The explosive shockwave knocked Bruce to the ground. Bruce coughed twice, struggled to get up, and a smear of bright red blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Even if the shrapnel from the explosion couldn't hurt Bruce, some of the shockwave from the explosion could indirectly hurt him through the armor. Tony was fine, not only laying on the ground, but also protected by a layer of armor, so he didn't suffer too much damage. As for Steve, it was miserable. Although he was a little far away from the shockwave, he was still hurt by the shrapnel on his thigh. Luckily it's just the thighs. If it's the heart, then Steve could go down and dance with his first love tonight. There was thick smoke all around. Just now Oda's men took advantage of the explosion and threw several smoke bombs. The smoke gradually dissipated. Bruce glanced around quickly. Damn it, Tien escaped again, Bruce said in a low voice. Tony's tone was also a little low. I should listen to you, Bruce, Joker is too good. And Steve didn't speak, he just sat on the ground with a dazed face, he couldn't even feel the pain in his body. They took Bucky. Steve stood up suddenly, but the pain made him sit back down. Who is Bucky? Bruce was puzzled. He just came over and didn't know the cause and effect of what happened here. Tony was lying on the ground, trying to stand up several times without success. Damn it. I have to exercise when I go back. Tony finished talking to himself out of breath, and then he answered. Bucky is Roger's friend. Who would have thought that our captain had passed 70 years? There is actually a friend who looks to be about the same age as him alive. Tony. Hiss, Steve gasped, and then continued. Bucky was just bewitched by the Joker, he's actually a good guy. While the three were talking, Natasha Romanoff also walked in from the outside. The soldiers who confronted me just now retreated suddenly. How is the situation here? None of the three spoke, but the remaining 2 agents said, Natasha Romanoff, agent's matter is serious this time. The person who hijacked the cruise ship and killed the 25 pirates was Joker. Not only that, but a comrade in arms of the captain during World War E also appeared here, the weird guy who could catch the captain's shield. And listen to what Joker said that said, Hydra has not been wiped out, but has survived until now. The agent told Natasha Romanoff all the news in a few words. Natasha Romanoff squinted her eyes, then looked at the two agents. Do you still remember the clothes and appearance of the captain's comrade in arms just now? Draw it for me. One of the agents nodded, and then directly took out a tactical pen and started on the ground. Not long after, a lifelike painting appeared on the ground. Natasha Romanoff looked at the painting in front of her, her face suddenly became serious. This is really bad. I didn't expect these people to be from Hydra. You know? Steve looked over at Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff nodded, then revealed a bullet hole above her navel and opened her mouth. This is the closest I've been to death since I was on a mission. I was on a mission in Africa. The mission was to protect the head of a country. We were attacked, I was shot, and I was wearing this. The man in the clothes killed the leader while I was lying on the ground. This bullet hole was also shot at that time. Later, I went back and checked a lot of information. I found that many assassinations were related to these people. These people all have a unified name, Winter Warrior. Natasha Romanoff looked at several people, and then said, according to my investigation, there is more than one of these people. If according to what Steve said, that person is his friend, then I'm afraid he has been brainwashed. Steve gritted his teeth, then shook his head and said, impossible, it's impossible, I'm going to ask Bucky, he must still remember me. Natasha Romanoff sighed. Someone always has to sacrifice, no? After a few more minutes, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicopter rushed to the battlefield. All of them came to the position of the back kitchen. Hawkeye went down first. Bruce shook his head. Your speed is a little too late, Shaoshan has already left. Hawkeye shook his head with a wry smile. This is already the fastest speed. Tricurve Wing S.H.I.E.L.D. Division. The conference room at the moment was full of S.H.I.E.L.D. executives. Some of them squinted their eyes, still wearing pajamas, their eyes were sleepy, obviously because they had just been woken up. Except for Nick Fury and Hill, who were still a little energetic in their seats, the other Gao Kong were all a little bit upset. Is there anything you can't talk about during the day? Do you have to wake us up from sleep at night? Isn't the time they spend working as workers counted as time? So under such circumstances, it's no surprise that everyone can give Nick Fury a good face. One of the people from Hydra said directly, what's the matter, to wake us up from the bed in the middle of the night for a meeting? If we continue to remain silent, then I'll go back to sleep first. After finishing speaking, he also pretended to yawn. That's right, you have to get a good night's sleep before you can talk about big things. As soon as this remark came out, it was like a small stone being thrown into the water, causing layers of waves. Many high-level people immediately began to discuss with different opinions. Nick Fury also sat in his seat without changing his face, watching everyone talking. Finally, the voice gradually subsided. Nick Fury then slowly opened his mouth and said, not long ago, 10 urgent reports came from cruise ships belonging to 10 S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Indian Ocean. What urgent report? Pierce asked, standing up abruptly. Nick Fury glanced at Pierce with a smile, and then said, don't worry Pierce, this matter is closely related to all of us here. If there were a few people Nick Fury trusted most at S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce was one of them. After all, Pierce and he have been working together for decades. He can be said to know all about Pierce. Pierce also realized that he was a little too hasty, so he sat back on the seat again, but his hands were placed under the table at some point. Tonight, the Indian Ocean. When these two words are combined, all Pierce can think of is the insight plan reported to him by Hitwell's bald agent a few days ago. Could it be that Nick Fury spotted Project Insight ahead of time? Pierce couldn't help but sweat in the palms of his hands under the seat. Pierce and Hydra executives all looked at Nick Fury one by one, wanting to see what he wanted to say next. If according to Joker's words, Captain America and Natasha Romanoff's information, then Hydra has never been extinct 70 years ago. Nick Fury sat down, tapped his fingers lightly on the table one by one, making a dong 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 sound. Hit every high-level person who has a ghost in his heart. Pierce's eyes narrowed, and at the same time he was secretly cursing Oda in his heart. This guy, what does he want to do? I'm just assuming Hydra has never become extinct, I think S.H.I.E.L.D. should more or less find some clues. As he spoke, Nick Fury couldn't help knocking on the table a little louder, and his tone became serious. But the current situation is that for 70 years, S.H.I.E.L.D. has not had a single report letter about Hydra. Nick Fury looked at the many high-level executives and let out a long breath, then scanned all the people present with sharp eyes. So I think, of all the people sitting here, there must be one or several people who are Hydra's undercover agent. Everyone sat in their seats, bowed their heads due to Nick Fury's power, not daring to show their atmosphere. The people in Hydra all clenched their fists tightly. They have already decided. If you can escape this disaster safely today, start selling the Joker position to Nick Fury tomorrow, and let S.H.I.E.L.D. go find him. Since you are not benevolent, don't blame us. Don't you have anything to say? If I find out, then. Before Nick Fury finished speaking, an 8th-level agent from the executive department stepped forward. Director Nick Fury, you also said that what you just said is just a hypothesis. Joker is just a criminal. Don't you want to directly suspect your colleagues who have been with you for so many years just because of Joker's nonsense words? Nick Fury looked at the speaker. Then he said, you are a member of the executive department, and you are also one of the first few people who can get in touch with the information. You jumped out so impatiently. Do you want to deny something? No, I'm just describing an established fact. The 8th-level agent said, Joker is chaotic, disorderly, and capricious. He is now saying that Hydra, an organization that was extinct during World War E, has revived for no reason. Don't you think it's funny? Even this is just a guess. You can't wait to call us here in the middle of the night. We have a lot of things to do every day. If you still want to suspect us around this guess, then I don't time to play this kind of house-playing game with you. The agent directly threw the hat in his hand on the seat, and then walked outside. He left the conference room without even the slightest hesitation, and then returned to his dormitory. Fury, if there's nothing else to do, I'm going back. Seeing an 8th-level agent leave, Pierce couldn't help but yawn and said, you've been studying Joker for so long, and it's not like you don't know about it. There's no need to take his crazy words as seriously as an imperial decree. If you have nothing to do, I will go back to rest. After all, my energy is not as energetic as the young boys. Nick Fury looked at the crowd with obviously slack expressions on their faces. His expression was uncertain. He lowered his head in thought, and raised his head after a long time. Glancing at his old buddy, he sighed faintly. It's true that I lacked consideration for today's matter. When I heard Hydra's name, I called you up without thinking too much, but I still hope that you will not be careless. After all, although Joker is a lunatic, there is no such thing as a lunatic in this world. There's nothing out of the ordinary, is there? Many senior executives nodded, and then sat up from their seats one by one, and then wobbled away from their seats. Before long, only Hill was left sitting there. Director Nick Fury, you. Hill was about to say something, but Nick Fury made a silent gesture. Immediately afterwards, he came under the seat of the first person who jumped out just now, stretched out his hand and groped for a while. Found it. A bug appears in Nick Fury's hands. Sure enough, I guessed correctly, there are indeed 5 people from Hydra in S.H.I.E.L.D. It's really unlucky, but fortunately our goal has been achieved. On an isolated island in the Indian Ocean, 2 cruise ships stopped. Joker disembarked with everyone from the 2 boats. Everyone is wet, and the temperature on the ocean at night is relatively low, and all of them are trembling except for a few people. Joker holds a USB flash drive handcuffed from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s cruise ship, and hands one of them to Crossbones. Hydra, you are more familiar with me than I am. Now in the eyes of S.H.I.E.L.D., you are already dead man. This USB flash drive contains the code of the Insight plan that you have tried everything possible to get. When the time comes, you will find a chance and send it back to Pierce. Crossbones took the wet USB drive and nodded. The electro-optical man was trembling all over, and there was a constant, cracking, crackling, sound on his body. It looked like he had been electrocuted while playing a video game. So cold, so hot, good set. Several agents near Electron moved their noses sensitively, and then they all asked with some doubts. Why is there a burning smell? Joker twisted his neck, and then said, okay, let's go here. Now can you tell me where Dr. Zola is? Crossbones nodded, and then said directly, Dr. Zola is actually dead a long time ago. Dead? Are you playing with us? There was a trace of coldness in Victor's eyes, and 10 steel claws grew out of his fingers. As if Crossbones' answer didn't satisfy him, all of them would die on this isolated island in the next moment. Definitely not. Crossbones waved his hand quickly, and said without any delay, Dr. Zola is indeed dead in a physical sense, and his body was buried by our people. However, Dr. Zola buried his body before dying. My own consciousness was uploaded to the computer, realizing a different kind of immortality. Eternal life. Tisk tisk, people from Hydra know how to play, Joker said in admiration. He directly uploaded his own consciousness to the internet, realizing immortality in disguise. This kind of person is simply a madman among madmen. Joker just felt more and more excited. I have to say that these things Zuoshi did are really very small to Tien's appetite. Where should I go now if I want to see Dr. Zola? Joker chuckled twice, then asked. Actually, Dr. Zola was going to be sentenced to death because he was a member of Hydra. But at that time, S.H.I.E.L.D. was in the reserve. Because there was a shortage of people at that time, Dr. Zola and many scientists of Hydra were pulled together into S.H.I.E.L.D. But Dr. Zola never gave up on the dream of Hydra. Having said that, Crossbone's eyes showed a little fanaticism. It was like seeing an idol. After Dr. Zola entered S.H.I.E.L.D., he constantly attracted other agents and scientists. In a short period of time, he attracted a large number of people. At the same time, Hydra was lying on S.H.I.E.L.D. like a maggot attached to the bone, and constantly extracted his blood to sustain himself. As for Dr. Zola's mainframe, it was actually in the first S.H.I.E.L.D. base established during World War E. It has never been removed. If our people want to see Dr. Zola, they all go directly to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Joker nodded. I see. You guys find a way to send the USB drive back. Sabretooth and Electron commanded their agents to carry some firewood to the yacht. Seeing Joker coming up, Electron quickly lit the fire. The fire immediately sent out billowing smoke. After the electro-optical man stretched out his hand, a smile appeared on his face. So warm. Joker stood on the bow of the ship, staring closely at the extremely dark sea, and let out piercing laughter from time to time. Dr. Zola? I really look forward to meeting you. New York. Times Square. In the center of this crowded square, at the moment seemed a little silent. One has only half of a human face, and the rest is all mechanical. The man stood in the center of Times Square at a loss, and then showed a dazed expression. No one dared to come up to talk. After all, Cyborg's appearance was a bit too weird. The usual superhero at least looks like a human, but Cyborg is a complete robot except for the half-human skin left. They are just bold, not desperate. If it is a superhero, they can also go online and say a few words. But what if you guess wrong? This person is actually the villain. Then if they provoked him, their lives might be in danger. So the atmosphere here fell silent for a while. And there are a few brave people in the back who have started to secretly pick up the camera to record, and want to upload this appearance of Cyborg to the internet. Cyborg glanced lightly at those who wanted to record, and a thought flashed in his mind. The cell phones of those who were recording were cut off from the internet in one fell swoop. It seems that the information I want should not be found here. There are many thoughts in Cyborg's mind. Just when Cyborg got up and turned around to leave for other places, a little boy suddenly came to Cyborg, holding a figure of Captain America in his hand. Excuse me, are you a superhero? The little boy raised his handle high, and said to Cyborg with a hopeful expression on his face. He looked at Cyborg eagerly, obviously wanting to get an answer from his mouth. Tom. A fashionable white woman saw her child running up to Cyborg in silence, and hurriedly wanted to come over and pull him back. But the child is a bit stubborn, he wants to get an answer from Cyborg. The corner of Cyborg Mechanic's mouth twitched slightly and then revealed a smile. He stretched out a hand and touched the child's head, then smiled and said, You guessed it, I'm from the Justice League. Yeah. I knew it. The little boy also laughed happily. He turned his head to look at his mother and said, Mom, look, I guessed right. That's right, that's right. The woman took the reluctant little boy by the hand and left. Justice League. Cyborg didn't deliberately lower his voice, so his words were naturally heard by the people around him. One of them, a rather bold boy who looked about 18 or 19 years old, came over. Then he took out his water glass and handed it to Cyborg. I saw that in addition to the logo of Wayne Group on the water glass, there are 4 large characters engraved in a place in the center, Justice League. Wayne Group. Cyborg became excited. He tightly grabbed the arm of the 18 or 9-year-old boy and asked impatiently, Do you know who the founder of the Wayne Group is? Definitely no. Wayne Group has only been established for only 2 years. It has become a top 50 company in the world. And the founder of Wayne Group is named Bruce Wayne, and now he has squeezed into the Forbes list top 10 of. Cyborg breathed a sigh of relief. It was the Wayne Group he thought of. As the saying goes, there are 4 happy events in life. In the long drought, there is nectar, in a foreign land, when you meet an old acquaintance, in the bridal chamber, at the wedding night, when you are named on the gold list. When he crossed over before, Cyborg was still worried that he was alone. How would he survive in this strange world? After all, his appearance is really a bit too unique. Now someone suddenly told him that Bruce had also traveled over and created the Wayne Group. Cyborg was immediately given a reassurance, and all the previous anxiety and uneasiness subsided. Thanks. Cyborg thanked him sincerely, and then directly connected his divine consciousness to the internet to find the location of the Wayne Group. Cyborg knew very well that as long as he found the Wayne Group, he would definitely be able to find Bruce. Soon, a light flashed in Cyborg's eyes. Light beams are constantly emitted from all parts of the body, generating powerful thrusts one after another. I saw Cyborg soaring into the sky in an instant, turning into a meteor and flying towards the distance. New York military base. Rhodes' face was greasy. He had just fallen asleep, and then he was called by a phone call and hurried to the military base. Is there something you can't talk over the phone, and you still want to call me here? Rhodes yawned, and then said with resentment. Colonel Rhodes, take a look at this. This is what we found from the cameras in Times Square earlier. A soldier quickly opened his mouth and said. Rhodes walked over, and then opened his eyes hard to watch. Zhaobing immediately started to call the screen on the monitor, and then constantly zoomed in and zoomed in. Until a complete human figure appeared on the computer screen. F*K, is Times Square throwing some kind of horror party right now? Rhodes was taken aback by the half-face, and then quickly jumped aside and asked. Zhaobing shook his head, and then called up a satellite image. This man a robot. His speed is even faster than Tony Stark's Iron Man, it should be around Mach 10. And we put this half-face in the global database for comparison. As a result, no face was found that could correspond to him. Rhodes paced around, then picked up the phone in his hand, and called Tony without any hesitation. Tony on the opposite side had just returned home, and was about to communicate with the beauty he had neglected, but was immediately overwhelmed by this phone call. Seeing the contact person above, Tony picked up the phone angrily. Rod, if you have nothing important to do, I absolutely want you to look good. Do you soldiers like to call people in the middle of the night? Rhodes didn't answer Tony's question, but quickly asked. Tony, have you developed a robot with only half a human face recently? Definitely no one would develop something like that, Tony subconsciously said. But he reacted quickly, and said with a puzzled look, are you suspecting that I built a robot? It's fine if you don't have one. Rhodes breathed a sigh of relief, and then said, just now the military's satellite captured a robot with only half a human face, and his flight speed is faster than your mech, reaching hit Mach 10. Yeah. Tony immediately became interested, and said directly, send me his picture for a look. Hold on. Rhodes directly sent Tony the photo on the monitor. Tony squinted, and got up again. He has no interest in doing such vulgar things now. Tony didn't look at the sad gaze of the Hollywood actress, he got up directly, and said, you can sleep here today, someone will come to pick you up tomorrow morning. I have something. After speaking, Tony went straight to the basement. Jarvis, analyze the photo just now. A three-dimensional model suddenly appeared in front of Tony. Tony reached out to try to swing, to split, but the model didn't move. Tony frowned and said, why can't I take this guy apart? According to system detection, this is a complete humanoid. It has its own independent life and cannot be dismantled. Is that so? Tony's eyes lit up suddenly, he was very interested in this sudden appearance. So Tony asked Jawei XU to help him put on the armor, and then asked, where is he now? According to the satellites, he is now heading in the direction of the Wayne Group at Mach 10. Wayne Group? Tony was even more interested. If I guessed correctly, this person might also come from another world. So Tony went straight ahead at full speed, the booster behind him was used to the extreme, and flew in the direction of Cyborg. Just a few kilometers away from the Wayne Group, Cyborg stopped suddenly, and he looked warily at the man wearing the Mark armor who suddenly appeared in front of him. Who are you? Why are you stopping me? Cyborg asked. Don't get me wrong, there is no malice. Tony shrugged, and then wanted to come to Cyborg's side to study the body on Cyborg. But Cyborg just avoided it, and looked at Tony warily. Tony smiled helplessly, and then said, you should be looking for Bruce, right? Cyborg nodded. I'm Bruce's friend, my name is Tony Stark. Just call me Tony, the same as Bruce. Tony held out his hand familiarly. Cyborg also brushed off Tony's face, and reached out to shake Tony's hand. Tony fought back his excitement. How can he not see it with his eyes? This is completely a person whose whole body has been transformed into a robot that will not age or get sick. So can I ask you a question? Tony asked directly. Cyborg nodded. How did you get this body? I mean, how did you get it? Tony asked dryly. He was really curious about how superb techniques were needed to remove all the organs of the body, and then replace them with incomparably strong parts. You must know that this is an absolutely impossible task for Tony. My name is Victor Stone, and my code name is Cyborg. Cyborg paused, and then said in a low tone, actually, this is not a secret. At that time, my mother and I were driving to school, but we were suddenly hit by an out-of-control truck on the road. My mother died on the spot, and I was dying. My father was working on the mother box in the laboratory. What is a mother box? Tony really wanted to ask this question, but seeing Cyborg's sad face, he didn't ask it after all. Or ask later. Tony thought to himself. If the guess is correct, I am afraid that this so-called mother core is the culprit for Cyborg to become like this. I only heard Cyborg continue to say, Actually, strictly speaking, I should not be able to live. Cyborg sighed a little, his eyes seemed to see him dying at that time. At that time, the hospital had stopped the treatment, and I was just hanging my last breath. But my father took me back home, and then brought back the mother box. He used electric current to stimulate the mother box to release energy, and the mother box released the energy enveloped me. I was in unimaginable pain, and when I woke up again, I was like this. Having said that, Cyborg sighed. Tony's expression was a bit complicated. He didn't expect the person in front of him to have such a past. He can totally imagine it. His mother had just died, and then he himself was seriously injured in a car accident. When I needed my father the most, he was not by my side. How hopeless it would be. And do you hate him? Hate? Cyborg was obviously taken aback for a moment before realizing that he was asking if he hated his father. Cyborg smiled, with a smirk on the corner of his mouth. At first I really hated it, and even hated him for turning me into a weirdo who didn't fit in with modern society. But I don't hate it anymore, and I even feel grateful to my father. He pulled me from the edge of life when I came back. I was given an ability that no one else could have imagined in my life. Cyborg stretched out his hand, and the mechanical hand was rattling non-stop. And my father was great. He let us leave the building in order not to get the mother box by Steppenwolf, and he triggered the possibility that he wanted to die with Steppenwolf. Cyborg put his hand down a little dejectedly. If only I had the ability to save him back then. Tony put his hands on Cyborg's shoulders, then said with a smile, "My experience is similar to yours. When I was very young, my parents also left me, leaving me only a room ranked in the world. #1 company. It's just that unlike you, I still can't understand my father. Come on, I'll take you to Bruce." Maybe it was Cyborg's experience that made him feel a little empathetic. Maybe it was that Cyborg's life experience was really pitiful. But I have to say that Cyborg's words made Tony successfully let go of his guard, and it created a feeling that Tianya was also a fallen person. Just when the two were about to leave, a Batfighter suddenly appeared in front of them. I was about to go home when I suddenly discovered that a satellite I launched detected abnormal energy in this area. Hurry up. The door to the rear cabin of the Batfighter was opened. The two went up. Bruce on the driver's seat saw Cyborg and asked, "Victor, when did you cross over?" "Not too long ago. When I first came out, I was in New York, and a boy told me that you had started the Wayne Group, and I wanted to come to you, but I met him halfway." Victor pointed to Tony. Bruce looked at Tony, and then asked with some doubts, "Didn't you date the actress who appeared in Hollywood Magazine this month? Why did you run out again?" Tony shrugged. "They can sleep whenever I want. But it's rare to see Victor. And when he flew over, he was photographed by the military satellite. Rhodes asked me at that time, and then I directly flying this way." Having said that, Tony patted himself on the head. "Almost forgot. I saw Tony picked up the phone and dialed Rhodes' number. Rod, don't look for it anymore. The person you saw on the satellite is not an enemy." Rhodes on the opposite side just wanted to ask Tony, but Tony hung up the phone immediately. Bruce glanced at Tony, and then said, "Since you're here, let's go back to my base first." With that said, Bruce drove the Batfighter directly in the direction of Wayne Group. After arriving at the Wayne Group, the three of them got off the plane. Alfred was already there waiting. "Alfred, it's so late that you should go back to rest. I told you a long time ago that you don't have to wait here for me." Seeing Alfred, Bruce had a rare wry smile on his face. Instead of answering Bruce's question, Alfred smiled at Bruce and greeted Tony. Victor was the last to be seen. "Long time no see, Victor." Victor smiled at Alfred. "Long time no see, Steward Alfred." The three got into the car driven by Alfred, and then entered the Bat base. After arriving at the base, Tony couldn't wait to ask, "What is the mother box? Is this thing related to Steppenwolf?" Bruce glanced at Victor, then sighed. "That's right, the mother box does have something to do with Steppenwolf. The mother box was originally a weapon used by Darkseid to rule the planet. Each mother box has unparalleled energy. Darkseid is the boss of Steppenwolf. If all three mother boxes are collected, Apocalypse Star the key will be opened." Having said that, Ruth shook his head. "But now you don't need to worry about this problem. Steppenwolf should have been summoned alone. In other words, there is no Darkseid in this world. So there is no need to worry about the mother box." Tony's eyes dimmed a bit, but he quickly adjusted his mood. "Is Darkseid as powerful as Steppenwolf?" As soon as the words came out, Bruce and Cyborg looked at each other. In the end, it was Cyborg who said, "Darkseid is slightly louder than Steppenwolf." Cyborg compares a fingertip universe. Bruce didn't bother to lie, but he couldn't tell Tony about Darkseid yet. Because behind Tony is S.H.I.E.L.D. headed by Nick Fury. If they know that behind Steppenwolf there is a more powerful Darkseid who can even be Black and Superman, then I am afraid that Nick Fury will develop Wugga through Tesseract at all costs. Tony also noticed the expressions of the two, and he also guessed something. Tony squinted his eyes, but didn't take away what the two said. After all, how can a leader not be as powerful as his minions? The next day. Shield Base. Steve stormed into the Shield Base in a rage, and no one stopped him. After all, what happened last night has spread to everyone's ears. He went straight to the elevator, and then walked straight up to the top floor. With the drop of the elevator, the top floor arrived. Steve didn't even knock on the door, he pushed it open, sat down across from Nick Fury and asked coldly, "Are you just lying?" Nick Fury at the moment was looking at the documents in his hand with some headaches. He sighed secretly when he saw Steve, and then put the documents back. "I'm not lying, we did not continue to investigate the information on the ship at that time." "What about Black Widow? Why did we go to rescue people, and she led another group of people in another direction? She didn't come in at all according to my order. Don't you have an obligation to share information with me?" Steve's tone was angry. At the same time, he also felt sad that the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. had such an unreliable director. Nick Fury turned his head away, and said, "I have no obligation to share anything with anyone. The hostages are all dead, Fury. It's not just the hostages. A dozen people went to this operation, and only 4 people came back safely. The rest of the people have all been killed. Don't you think you should be responsible for this responsibility?" Nick Fury turned around, then met Steve's gaze. "I've sent the best soldiers ever to save their lives. Everyone thought it was a safe operation, Captain." Nick Fury said lightly, "I think you should be clear by now what a dangerous enemy Joker is. His behavior is completely unpredictable. Even now we don't even know where Joker is." Just as Nick Fury was speaking, a diddy sound suddenly entered his ears. Urgent information. Nick Fury opened the email on the computer directly in Steve's face. "I found Joker's stronghold in New York. One of Joker's strongholds is currently in the S.H.I.E.L.D. base in Queens, New York. Joker has brainwashed there, and now all the agents there are Joker's people. There we found Abomination and Dr. Blue, and many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in service. Sitwell. Captain, there is a new mission." After Nick Fury finished reading the email, he immediately became serious. "This matter is no small matter. Joker has completely brainwashed an agent in a district of New York without knowing when. If Joker suddenly has a whim and goes crazy, then the civilians in the entire Queens district will suffer. Damn it." Steve also quickly scanned through the contents of the email. He hammered the table heavily, and then said unhappily, "Captain, getting angry won't solve any problems. The more tense it is, the more Nick Fury will be able to calm down. This is an ability that must be prepared as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and a 10th level agent. Soldiers need to trust each other, and the army also needs to trust. I don't want us to lose soldiers for no reason because of your problems next time." Nick Fury stood up abruptly, then looked at Steve in front of him and said word by word, "Last time I mistrusted someone else, so I lost an eye. I don't want to assign you tasks you don't want to do. Natasha Romanoff's mission is a little different from yours." Steve also turned back without any hesitation. "The subordinates are doing their own thing. How do you want me to lead the team? For an army, the most important thing is absolute obedience. The behavior of Natasha Romanoff yesterday, if it is serious in the army, can be dealt with as treason." Nick Fury stared at Steve with his one eye, and said, "That's called split management, because no one knows what the mission is, so it doesn't." Dense. After speaking, Nick Fury left his seat and came to Steve. "You got me wrong. I'll share, I'm that friendly." After speaking, Nick Fury walked outside without looking back. Steve also hurriedly followed. After a while, heavy trucks led the agents towards the direction of Queens in batches. After arriving at the location where the Hydra S.H.I.E.L.D. base is located, there are already a large number of residents here, mostly young people and children. Most of them wear a Joker mask on their faces, shouting, "Joker hail! Joker, come and rule New York! Joker, you are my god!" Nick Fury and Steve stepped out of a Chevrolet. Nick Fury asked the agent who had arrived earlier with an ugly face, "What's going on here? Didn't I tell the New York Police Department and the military to transfer all the plot out as soon as possible? Why? So many people gathered here all of a sudden." The face of the agent who was asked was also a little ugly. "Because he is responsible for this matter. Director Nick Fury, I have obviously conveyed the request to the New York Police Department and the military, and I have also told them the purpose. But I don't know which bastard leaked the news. Because Joker played tricks on us in the other 2 departments a few times ago, now New York has gathered a large number of crazy Joker fans. People from various districts in the city are constantly gathering here, and I heard that the police station has asked people to stop the subway in New York in order not to cause trouble, Otherwise, there will only be more people gathered here. Seeing the crazy people around, Steve's expression became even uglier. He didn't expect that a criminal would be so sought after in New York. It is simply putting the cart before the horse. Nick Fury sighed, thoughts racing through his head. Suddenly, he saw Captain America standing there blankly, and suddenly a light flashed in his mind. I saw Nick Fury snatching an agent's big horn, and then shouted directly at the horn. Look! The living Captain America has appeared. Huh? Captain America? Captain America. My little one. Damn. It's really a living Captain America. Woo! For a moment, the group's enthusiasm for Joker quickly faded away, and all of them squeezed frantically to come to Steve's side and point a few times at America's buttocks. Okay. Everyone, listen to me. As soon as these words came out, all the surrounding voices fell silent, and everyone wanted to see what Steve wanted to say. After all, most of the people here are just common people. An ordinary life, an ordinary job, an ordinary life. For them, Joker has brought them a lot of fun in their lives, so they are happy to travel hundreds of miles from one district to another to cheer for Joker. With Steve, it's even more different. Steve has been engraved in the hearts of generations since World War I. It can be said that Steve has become a totem now. In the United States, you don't even need to know who the leader of the Congress is, you don't need to know who is sitting in the White House, but you absolutely must know who Captain America is. Americans advocate individual heroism, and Captain America is the greatest hero to them. So even though many people already know that Captain America has come back from the dead, after all, most people think it's a rumor and don't believe it. But now, these people saw Captain America appear in front of them with their own eyes, and they went crazy instantly. Everyone, I know that some of you have come here from far away, and some of you have lived here. I want to say, no matter where you are from, please step back now. Joker is a very dangerous people. We should take protecting our own lives as the first element. Shall we return it? As soon as Steve finished speaking, the crazy fans couldn't wait to shout, yes. The voice reached the sky, and veins appeared on many people's heads, which shows how hard they shouted. Okay. Now please follow the pace of the police station and step back a little, leaving us enough space. There is no need for NYPD and military people at all now. All the people at the moment all retreated quickly towards the back spontaneously, for fear that they would block the way of others and make Captain America unhappy. In no time, they had retreated enough. Nick Fury looked at this scene and said with a sigh of relief, "It seems that I still underestimated your influence. If I knew it, I would have sent you here. I don't need people from the police station and the military at all." The New York Police Department not far away also looked at Steve with bright eyes. This unparalleled appeal. As this Captain America? His eyes have become the shape of stars, ready to go to war. Nick Fury took out the speaker and turned it up to maximum. Joker, we have found your base. I advise you to surrender now. Otherwise, we will bomb directly. Nothing happened. Nick Fury yelled again. Still nothing happened. Nick Fury and Steve looked at each other suddenly, and a bad premonition emerged in their hearts simultaneously. It has only been half an hour since they received the message. Joker and the others shouldn't have prepared to evacuate so quickly. Steve walked straight towards the door. Team leader. Don't worry about me. I don't know what's going on inside now. I'll go explore the way first, and I can come out if there is danger. Steve waved the shield in his hand, and said. After speaking, Steve slammed directly towards the door. Strangely, the gate was not closed, it was knocked out of the way by Steve. Some people could not help closing their eyes and waiting for the explosion. Because of Joker's vicious reputation, almost everyone thought that Joker made some movement on the closed door after hearing the movement. After all, there is so much movement here. So no one dared to go up and open the door, and now Steve knocked the door open. The expected explosion sound did not come, and as far as everyone could see, there was only a desolate and uninhabited base full of debris. Steve pressed the headset, and then said with a dull gaze, "Come in. Joker has left. There is nothing here." After speaking, Steve turned his head straight and left the Joker base in Queens. Hearing Steve's words, Nick Fury didn't show any particularly disappointed expression on his face, but stretched his brows and said, "Since Joker is no longer here, then send a few people to check when the people here are leaving. I want to know the detailed information. After sorting it out, it will be sent directly to my mailbox." Yes. At this moment, the voice of Natasha Romanoff also came out. "Director Nick Fury, we've checked inside the tunnel, and there's no sign of anyone." Fury nodded expressionlessly. "I see." After receiving the information, he sent Natasha Romanoff and Hawkeye to check inside a passage in the base. After all, it was built by S.H.I.E.L.D., so naturally he knew where there was a secret passage. But alas, Joker doesn't seem to be that gullible. "Let's close the team. Nick Fury sighed, and sat back in the Chevrolet he'd spent so much money on. Steve sat up too. When leaving, Steve wanted to talk a few times, but each time he hesitated. Nick Fury was driving the car, glanced at him and said, "If you have anything to say, just say it. There is no surveillance in my car." Steve then opened his mouth and said, "Joker said that Hydra has not been completely wiped out since World War E, so is there an undercover agent of Hydra in S.H.I.E.L.D.? Today's operation was passed on to Joker by people from Hydra?" Nick Fury shook his head. "Captain, half of what you said is correct. There are indeed Hydra undercover agents in S.H.I.E.L.D., and I have already caught one, and he is now locked in the confinement room." Nick Fury paused, and then continued, "But today's matter may not be that simple. I'm afraid Joker has long been mixed with Hydra, and he even corrupted a base, but we didn't get any news. And I suspect that today's news was deliberately delivered by the Hydra people, and it should be to avenge yesterday." As for Sitwell, Nick Fury didn't know what to say. He is also a little confused about whether this Sitwell is an agent of Hydra. "You said he was right?" He directly reported Joker's location and real name to Nick Fury. "You say he is not? He was also particularly close to the man he was caught. Not only that, but where did Sitwell know the exact location of Joker?" "I'm afraid Hitterwell doesn't know it himself. His original intention is to dispel Nick Fury's suspicion that he is Hydra. But turning a tiger into a cat, Nick Fury not only did not alleviate his suspicion, but even became more and more suspicious." New York. Manhattan. Inside a cruise ship in the port. "Joker. Why did you suddenly call us all out, saying that you want to transfer collectively?" Dr. Lan asked a little unhurriedly. "He recently asked for a lot of blood from Abomination and Sabretooth, and even some from Electro. He wants to research a real monster. Recently he has had some ideas, and when he was working hard yesterday, Aren suddenly broke in and told him that this base will be discovered soon, and they need to go to a safer place." Joker squinted his eyes, sat on the sofa and said, "We have been betrayed by Hydra. Now, except for these people here, no one else can be trusted." "Betrayed?" Dr. Lan was stunned for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "Then when will we take revenge? I've made a few biochemical weapons these days. As long as Sabretooth throws one in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base, it's guaranteed that not a single mosquito in it can leave alive. Come out." Dr. Lan is an expert in the field of biology. He is even better than the academicians of the General Academy of Sciences. Otherwise, Banner at the time would not have asked Dr. Lan for help in researching an antidote that could inhibit Hulk. For this kind of people, using some materials to study some biochemical weapons that can kill people is really the easiest thing. "Don't worry about revenge." Joker touched his chin, and then said, "Now S.H.I.E.L.D.'s security is definitely much stricter than before. Even if Victor wants to sneak in quietly, it is completely impossible, let alone holding the biological weapon you are researching. I'll take care of the matter of revenge. Since they betrayed me, then they must not have a good life. You should change this trash's arm first." Joker pointed to Bucky on the stretcher and said, "The metal used for his mechanical arm was too rubbish, and it disappeared after being blasted by Iron Man's energy cannon. With that old guy's notes, haven't you already researched the extraction method of advanced adamantium? I also gave you the meteorite from before, and you just use advanced adamantium to make him a new arm." Dr. Lan nodded, and then laughed, hee, twice. "Leave it to me. I will definitely make him into what you want." Dr. Lan's smile was a little twisted. Joker is very satisfied. He found that Dr. Lan is more and more appetizing to him now. "Don't worry. It's okay if you die. Anyway, now we know all the bases of Hydra around the world. At worst, after he dies, we can go directly to a base and get a Winter Warrior out." "That's right. Winter Warrior isn't Bucky's codename. He is the general term for all the murder weapons produced by Hydra during World War E. Winter Warrior is often brought out to perform missions. After the execution, Winter Warrior will continue to return to the dormant chamber, and the memories in his mind will also be brainwashed and retrograde. Hydra uses this method to ensure that the murderous weapon of Winter Warrior is always under their control." "Where do we go now?" Joker raised his head and looked at the world map hanging on the wall of UU. "Now we have already been to Siberia, and there is nothing valuable there. But now, we will go to Whitton, New Jersey, where there is a person that I am very interested in. To be precise, say, it's a code I'm interested in." "Then shall we go now?" Aren asked. Joker laughed out loud. "Definitely. Nick Fury and those guys in Hydra probably think that I have escaped now. Who would have thought that not only did I not escape now, but I was even planning to go to the real headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. Joker's orders have been delivered. The agent who drove the boat put away the anchor without any hesitation, and then pressed the gas pedal. The water valve began to rotate immediately under the action of the engine. Immediately afterwards, the yacht sailed directly in the direction of Whitton, New Jersey. Dr. Lan couldn't wait to let the two agents move Bucky to a spare room, and then directly used brute force to dismantle Bucky's entire arm. Even on the remaining half of the mechanical arm, a lot of shreds of meat were directly torn off. The unconscious Bucky grunted, but didn't wake up. Dr. Blue smiled, and then gave Bucky another shot of sedation on his neck and near his heart. After all, his experiment still hurts later, and it won't be fun if Bucky wakes up halfway through. Dr. Lan threw the robotic arm aside and made a boom. Those experimental subjects in the past didn't have such a good physical fitness as this experimental subject. If this physical fitness is not successful, then I can only change the direction, Lan Boshan said with a strange smile. Immediately afterwards, he asked two agents to carry Bucky to the operating table. And he himself was wearing white surgical gown. Okay, you can do it. Dr. Lan glanced at the two of them lightly, and then gave orders unceremoniously. The two agents nodded quickly, then ran out of the room in a scramble. Many people in Dr. Lan's experimental base have seen it. There's only one word to describe it: creepy. Even the experienced agents like them still can't accept Dr. Lan's brutal experiments. Every once in a while, they will find some homeless people in the alleys of New York to experiment with Dr. Lan. After all, these homeless people don't pay taxes. Even if they disappear, no one will care at all. It is precisely because there is no shortage of people that when they are at the base, they can hear the miserable cries of the homeless people inside Dr. Lan's base almost every day. And every time they went in to carry the corpse, they could only see a messy corpse that didn't even have a human appearance. So in the Queen's base, if Joker is the person they fear the most, then Dr. Blue is the person they fear the most. Abomination, Victor and the like even have to walk back. I hope you can hold on. Even if it is a monster, I don't want it. My experiment can only create a dead man. Dr. Lan put on a mask, picked up a scalpel, looked at Bucky on the hospital bed and said coldly. Dr. Lan directly cut open Bucky's skin, revealing the beating heart inside. Boom boom boom. It beats again and again, fresh and vital. Dr. Lan laughed, picked up a needle and pierced it into the right lung of the heart, and injected all the adamantium liquid alloy inside. Bucky's whole body began to shake violently. Seeing this, Dr. Lan quickly took out the blood of hatred and Victor's blood and injected it into him. I saw Bucky's whole skin constantly turning red, yellow, white, and green. Bucky lay expressionless. The muscles and blood vessels in his body were constantly burned by the ultra-high temperature liquid, and then he started self-healing again. After an unknown amount of time, Bucky finally calmed down. Dr. Blue sniffed Bucky. Finding that he was still angry, he smiled and turned around to build a mechanical arm for Ba. Not long after, a pure mechanical arm made of advanced adamantium was manufactured, and Dr. Lan put Bucky on it without any hesitation. It took a lot of time for the whole process to come down. After some calculation, the tranquilizer on Bucky's body was about to lose its effect. Dr. Blue quietly looked at Bucky with a fanatical gaze, waiting for him to wake up. Sure enough, after a while, Bucky woke up. Huh? My hand? Bucky felt it for a moment, then stood up abruptly. But he was directly crushed to the ground by the sudden weight on his body. So heavy. Bucky gritted his teeth and said. He tried a few times before finally standing up tremblingly. What's going on? Why'd I feel so heavy on my body? Bucky looked at Dr. Blue and asked. Dr. Lan laughed, and his eyes were filled with tears of excitement at some point. I made it. I finally made it. See? I'm stronger than you. He gripped Bucky's arm tightly, and said, You're my best work. Bucky frowned, not knowing what Dr. Blue was talking about. What the hell are you talking about? Dr. Lan picked up his mechanical arm, and said, Do you feel your body getting heavier? That's because I replaced all the bones in your body with advanced adamantium. Now, Iron Man's the shells can no longer hurt you at all. Your strength is also several times stronger than before. Generally speaking, you are stronger than before. After speaking, Dr. Lan took Bucky's hand and walked out. Dr. Lan smiled and said, Fortunately, it's not a disgrace. He is definitely the work I am most satisfied with now. Joker looked at Bucky, who had already patched his arm, and then turned his head to look at Dr. Blue again. Hearing what Dr. Lan said, he suddenly became curious about what Dr. Lan transformed Bucky into. Hate. You go try Bucky, Joker said. The agents consciously gave way to the two for the competition. Hate gave a grin, then rushed towards Bucky without any hesitation. He punched hard, trying to defend his position. Bucky felt as if he was facing a big enemy. He quickly raised his hands to fight back. But being knocked into the air as he imagined didn't happen. Instead, there was a muffled bang. It's exactly the same sound as when the Abomination and Victor sparred together. Hate couldn't help but look at Bucky, and then at Lan Ren. How is this going? Joker couldn't help squinting his eyes and asked Dr. Lan. Dr. Lan smiled. It's very simple, I have replaced the bones in Bucky with advanced adamantium. Now his whole body is no different from Sabretooth except for self-healing ability and wolf claws. Yeah. Victor stood up, and looked at Bucky with interest and said. How did you inject adamantium into him? Didn't he burn through? Dr. Lan shrugged. Almost burnt through. But fortunately, the bottle of blood you gave me contained a small amount of your self-healing factor. It is also because of those that cure self-healing factor that Bucky's short-lived gained your self-healing ability. Because of this, Bucky managed to survive. Then can I? Hate asked impatiently. Although he is strong enough now, if there is an opportunity to become stronger, how could he not grasp it? His bones are not adamantium now. If he replaces all his bones with adamantium like Bucky did, then Hulk will not be his opponent at all. Dr. Lan shook his head. I'm afraid not. Why? Didn't Bucky get replaced? Your blood and Bucky's blood are compatible in a small amount, but if there is a large amount, the blood factors of both of you will be repellent. Definitely, if you are not afraid of your whole being burned to ashes, then you can try. Dr. Blue shrugged. Forget it. Hatred shook his head. He still felt a little regretful. At the same time, he kept his envious eyes on Bucky.